All right, people, we should be live. About a minute, 2 minutes late this time. So it's not too bad. Not too bad at all, I'd say. Just excuse me while I move a glass. As I make space on my coasters, because someone's nicked one. Uh, where am I? I'm talking right now. I should be talking. Am I talking? Yeah, it says my audio's working. Is it muted? No. Do I have to do a sound check? Don't make me do a sound check, people. Ugh. Do I have to do a sound check? Can you hear me? Is the audio working? Alright, that's what I like to hear. It's okay, good stuff. Yeah, fun day. Went out to get some clothes and stuff. Just general shopping. Woke up this morning. Apparently, there's a coup in Russia. So we're gonna cover that during the stream. But yeah, it's nuts. What a nuts day. Feels like anything else I want to discuss is just it's just small compared to the coup in Russia. Genuinely, I don't know what to make of. It's mad. Honestly, it's just words cannot explain how crazy the situation is. Like, I didn't expect it to happen this quickly. Um, it just it just escalated so quickly, and I'm just waiting to see whilst we're on stream if any other kind of news comes out. Um, but yeah, he just that Wagner group are just clearing through Russia. It's just clearing. It's just going straight through them. Honestly. Um, yeah, you can argue long overdue, but it's just happened so quick. Um, it's just happened so quickly. Last night there was some sort of argument between. It looked like between Shoigu and Prigozhin, and then next thing you know, Prigozhin's like, "No, I'll do it myself." He's like, "I'll do it myself. I'll sort you guys out myself." It starts, ran up on him. He's got tanks aimed at one of the buildings. He's yeah, they're fleeing. They're just getting out of dodge. Honestly, it's just it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy what's going on. I don't know what to do. Should I go through topics and then get to the Russian invasion at the end? Because there's a lot to discuss there. I'm just a bit wary just in case we see some breaking news just happen. No, it looks like they're running towards Moscow. Um, it's just self-expelled from Russia. It's just mad. Now, who would have thought arming a warlord with ridiculous amount of munitions could backfire on you? Especially a mercenary group that has no real loyalty. Um, Once he got shot, he ain't gonna get shot. They might try and hang him in the street, but he ain't gonna get shot. It won't end with a bullet to the head, that's for sure. Not straight away, anyways. I have no idea what that means, Akis. I'll be honest. Um, but yeah, we're still waiting to see um, what's going on. The situation in Rostov. They've taken Rostov by the looks of it, and they're heading straight for Moscow. But the problem is, apparently Kadyrov's group was heading to Rostov as well. But we don't know if that's true, given that Kadyrov's group have been called the TikTok Brigade because all they do is film that they're doing stuff, but they don't actually do stuff. Um, but yeah, let's go through topics. Then I'm going to keep an eye on the live bar. I wish the BBC had a dark mode. Every website should have a dark mode. Honestly, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. Um, we're witnessing history here. Honestly, we are witnessing history. All right, so we've got some questions in the post. So I will look through these and then we'll go through some of the topics I want to cover with the billion tabs I have open here. And these will be some of the stuff I'll cover during the week anyway. So I did have this really weird story about the council being in around £1.2 billion deficit, which I want to cover. I've scripted that already. It's a very long script, so that one's going to come out soon. Oops, that one's going to come out soon. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, this story, honestly. But yeah, mad. Broke down in Sterling, waiting to get car picked up. £150, Jesus. Alright, so first question's from Viking, which is, what do you think of the Irish government insisting on an Irish language proficiency test as Gaelic, I'm going to butcher pronunciations here, before issuing any further passports to Brits? Yeah, I think if you're born in Northern Ireland, you can get access to an Irish passport anyways. So I don't think it's really going to impact people born in Northern Ireland. I tell you, people, don't question my tabs yet, and here we are questioning the tabs. Honestly, just all right, okay. Wait until you see the RAM usage. That's where it gets really fun. But for now, we move. I think it's mostly going to affect people in Great Britain, I'm assuming. I think it's fine. Yeah, I don't really have an issue with it. Most countries have a language test for things like, I think, residency and passports, citizenship, basically. So I have no issue with them doing this, especially when, Irish passports are generally easier to get than most other passports. I don't care about handbags. I think most countries do have some sort of language test anyway, especially for residency and potentially for passports. I think it depends. But yeah, I've got no issue with this. It's going to impact the people who have claim Irish citizenship through a grandparent or something like that, or a parent, when they also might not know Gaelic. But yeah, there's no issue there, honestly. If you want to be a citizen of a country, it's not just lots of people grabbing Irish passports just because so they get freedom of movement back. There's more to a country than just that. Let's see. Question from Ellie: can I do a poll? How many of your EU-based commenters, viewers will have a Brexit party this weekend, celebrating Friday the 23rd being the 7th anniversary of the Brexit referendum? We will party. Guests arriving from 20-hour CET onwards, so I'll probably join in the beginning. Yeah, it's not much to celebrate on my end, so probably not going to bother with a poll. I'll be honest. See this from Lud Gaming's Lud Games. How would you? I'm going to zoom in here because I haven't got my glasses and I'm struggling a bit. See, how would you get around the illusion of security that seems to come with the Tories and their electors? The idea that keeps bringing them in. Is that they're good with the economy. What you could talk about is UK debt levels. Let's see if we can find a graph or something. So what you could do is you could talk about something like this, for example. You could talk about UK debt, being. See, so obviously there's the war period there. You've got, it being relatively low under, I think there's a couple of Labour governments in there. You've got Thatcher in there, the 80s. New Labour generally doing fine. And then, boom, you've got the Tories coming after the Great Recession. And just look at that spike. Look at that. It's gone from around 30% as a percentage GDP, I think it is, to over 100%. This is the stuff that they obsess about, the debt and the deficit. This is what I will talk about. Can you see that? Can you see that stagnation right there? How high the debt is there? That's the kind of thing I would talk about. It's the Tories that have increased the debt, and so what did they get out of it? Nothing. So that's the kind of thing I would talk about in terms of the illusion of security. Question from Verti: how is the UK economy going to go up when at the end of this year UK banks will lose 447 million customers after the 31st of the 12th 23? The UK financial sector is not allowed to provide financial services into the EU. That I'm not 100% sure about. I imagine it would be incredibly damaging, but I'm not an expert in the financial services sector, but I imagine it would be quite damaging, yeah. Because you would lose a lot of customers, and you would lose a lot of the money you would typically use to invest. in order to make profits and give some of that as crumbs to the people's savings accounts. Yeah, roads around Moscow being dug up to slow down the tanks and stuff like that. Looks like those machines have been destroyed. So yeah, again, it's not my area of expertise, the financial stuff. But all I would say is it's not a good situation to be in if you're one of the UK banks. They can set up subsidiaries within the EU, but then the money won't come back in, if that makes sense. So it's just not a good situation to be in for the banks. This one from AB-YM3BF. Simultaneously with the reappearance on screen of David Cameron, Osborne, Twins of Austerity, a report was published showing the UK NR out of 30 OECD countries in public investments, about half a trillion behind comparable nations, and now on top of that, Brexit consequences of lower investment, yet Brexiteers pointing at the UK attracting the most investments. Isn't it time we separate between investment and simple takeover by foreign companies from a fire sale? There was a point where the currency dropped last year considerably, and I think some of the big UK companies got brought out. Can't remember which ones. I think it was telecoms company was brought out. So yeah, you're right there. The fact is there's a difference between buyouts, things like buyouts, and foreign investment. And I agree there should be some sort of separation between the two. I just don't know how you would separate it. That's the problem. But are there any statistics like not really? You'd have to deep dive into the companies being brought out. I don't think they're gonna. So that's a tricky one. But no, I agree with that. Yeah, the UK being 27th out of 30th in the OECD countries. Do the OECD have a top 30? I thought they only had a top 20. OECD top 30. GDP per capita. That goes to 32 rows though, I think. No, they've got a top 34, so I don't know what list specifically you're talking about. But yeah, it's not. You got to be careful. They've got to be a bit more careful, I think, in the way they phrase things. Because, well, to be fair, it's not done for the benefit of the British public. I'll be honest. But being 27 out of 30 is really poor, to be honest. That's relegation territory, really, when you think about it. But yeah, us being behind other foreign nations is not surprising, given the fact that our kind of car industry is completely decimated. It's absolutely being decimated, and so will a lot of the other industries. So this doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest. So yeah, always be careful when you post statistics or post about this kind of stuff about where the UK is kind of placed. Should Sunak resign for evading the Johnson Partygate lies vote? No, Cass, I don't think that's a resignation worthy thing. It just shows that Bro's a coward. That's all we can really gather from that. He's a complete coward. That's about it. So I wouldn't say it's a resignable offence. I think he's done other things that warrant a resignation, to be honest, like the fraud during COVID, amongst other things, the eat out to help out. Those are things he should have resigned over, in my opinion, but not this. What are my thoughts on the Troubles Legacy Bill? I kind of answered this one in the comments, but I don't know enough about it. I know it does give some immunity to British soldiers who were involved in foreign operations, but beyond that, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there, and the whole, I haven't had enough time to read up on it. Maybe when it comes closer to passing, I'll do something on it. I think that would make more sense. Yeah, this one from Roshin. So, all kicking off in Russia. Do you think that Ukraine gets Russia out of its territory? Yeah, I think if I was Ukraine right now, I'd be pushing really aggressively, because Russian soldiers are being pulled back in order to deal with the Wagner Group, and the Wagner Group do have tanks. They have tanks and other things, so that means you need to pull your anti-tank weapons out, because your MG is going to do nothing against a goddamn tank. You'll get blown up real quick. So they're going to have to pull out a lot of equipment in order to deal with the Wagner Group, which means Russia can't have a war on this many fronts. It can't defend the home territory and attack another nation. It's just not going to work, especially not when that other nation has been given a lot of modern equipment. This is their chance now. The only thing the Wagner group don't have is air support, and that's going to be a massive problem for them. But that aside, they've got heavy weaponry. This group are no joke in terms of what they're packing, and they are moving through Russia at a very fast pace. They've taken over a couple of the cities. I think Rostov is one of the biggest cities in Russia. I think it might be 10th biggest city in Russia, and it's also one of the main supply hubs into Ukraine. So that's going to be massively problematic for Russia. I'm just going to grab just get a sip quickly. So yeah, I don't. They're in a very precarious position, and it could been time like that. It could end up being like when Lenin went back into Russia during World War One, where he just signed a treaty. He signed a treaty very quickly, and just but the thing is, the Tsar. I think the Tsar stood down. That was the only difference. I think the Tsar stood down during World War One. I think they're just gonna have to either Putin runs or he gets captured. There's no in between here. He can't if he surrenders power. I think they're gonna give him up. I think the deputy one of the top politicians in Russia has sought refuge in Turkey as an asylum seeker. I don't know which country would take Putin as an asylum seeker, to be honest, but that's his best bet. He needs to get the hell out. He needs to absolutely get the hell out if he wants to get out with his life. Because right now he's either looking at being prosecuted for war crimes or getting lynched in the street. I'll be honest, because that's the only way I can see this ending. I don't see this ending with just an assassination. I think they'll lynch him. I'll be honest. I think they'll do what they did to what's his name, Mussolini. That's how that's how I can see this ending. I don't think it'll be he's a guy, and I was going to talk about this towards the end of the stream actually, but he was the guy who wanted to make Russia great again, right? Rebuild the USSR and all of that kind of stuff, right? And ironically, he's the one who's taken out the Russian Federation. He's completely dismantled them, absolutely dismantled them, because they can't control the Caucasus regions anymore. What happens to Chechnya and the other places, we don't know. Russia was doing a lot of peacekeeping operations in its backyard. You can't do it anymore. So a lot of those countries that weren't fighting with each other, regionally, they're going to start fighting. I think this is Jenga, and I'll talk about why kind of my theories in a bit as to why I think Prigozhin could look at ending this war. But it's what he needs to, what's going to happen in Russia. I think is going to be a battle for control. It's going to be a bunch of warlords potentially fighting each other. There's a theory that there's a lot of money backing the Wagner Group. And if that's the case, that the Russian money, the oligarchs are backing Prigozhin, then that's Chenga. I think he'll be the next one to take power, and he's as brutal a dictator or as brutal as an authoritarian as Vladimir Putin is. So that's not good news for anyone if he's the one that wins, because the Wagner Group have done all sorts of nonsense in other countries. They were very prolific in Syria. I think they've had operations in Africa and other places. This is a group. This is a group which are very, very dangerous, incredibly dangerous, and they will kill civilians. They have been killing civilians in Ukraine. This is a very precarious position for Russia. This will not end in them becoming a democracy. This will probably end in another dictatorship, because these are the guys who have money. I can't imagine the West are going to get involved at all in terms of maybe they'll arm some groups, but I can see a civil war erupting, and it could happen like well, you had the Red Army versus, I think it was the White Army during the 1920s. I think it was when Russia erupted in civil war, kind of post World War One. I'd have to check the dates. That's why you need Political X, because he's the historian. I'm just gonna check the comments quickly. My name's not Raj. Stop calling me Raj. People keep doing that. Let's see. Deputy PM and his family. Yeah, I think yeah, there he is. The deputy PM. He's the one that's gone to Turkey. You think you're gonna run into him, Sabine? That'd be quite funny. The Wagner Group said they have control over Rostov, including the airbase there. And if the Wagner Group have access to air support and they have pilots, it's game over. It's game over, honestly, because close air support is one of the strongest things you can have. Close air support can take out tanks. Take out units, things like that. It's the power that the kind of jet planes have is nuts. Once you control the skies, you can do real damage to people. Close air support is OP. Let's see. Anything else? History shows you can't fight two wars at once and do anything but lose. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. To be fair, though, in World War One, the Germans were close to doing it. They were fighting on both flanks, and they didn't do the worst. Let's see. Smash the like button. Yes, hit the like button. Let's see. Russia is not anti-war. This, as we would like. I mean, they're gonna. I think Putin promised people peace, and they were happy to accept that. Just as long as you leave the Russian government alone, you'll be fine for the most part. And that promise has been broken. He can't keep them safe, and I think people know that. And I don't think people really liked Putin that much. I think they tolerated him more than anything because there was no alternative. And if you did try and go for an alternative, you get killed. So that's pretty much it. Let's see. Lots of nasty warlords types in Russia. True. Prigozhin won't last long, even if you made it to president. The Kremlin is full of enemies. Yeah, that's the problem. There's lots of people vying for power, and lots of people willing to stab you in the back for it. That's the problem with these kind of countries. Lukashenko held talks with Prigozhin in agreement with Putin. Press service. Yeah, there's something weird going on in Belarus. I think Belarus might have something going off over there. Would be funny if there was a socialist uprising in the middle of it. I know it won't happen. I mean, unless you Monster Reborn, what's his face, Vladimir Lenin. The Russian Civil War between the White and Russians. There it is, 1917 to 23. So it was just after the end of World War One, I think, or just after the treaty was signed with the Germans. Wagner have manpads. Yeah, if they got manpads, then yeah, they can start firing at Russia's close air support. And if they've got their own jets, then it gets real interesting. If the Wagner Group have managed to get some of those, what are they called? I can't remember the Russian jets. The Russian jets. What are the names of them? Let's see if I can just Google it quickly. Just bear with me 1 second. Russian jets, because I've been watching loads of videos on it. Sukhoi. That's it. The Su-57. If they get access to Russia's good jets. I think it's Jenga, honestly. Lukashenko will be gone. I think Lukashenko will be gone. Yes. Prigozhin accepted the proposal of the president of Belarus to stop the movement of armed persons of the Wagner. Prigozhin accepted the proposal of Lukashenko. Man portable air defense system. Yeah, but stuff like Stinger missiles and stuff like that. The ones that ordinary soldiers can use to take out planes. And boy, are they good at them? Yeah, the Su-25. Lenin holds the number 3 spot on the top 10 murderers. Hitler is number 4. That's interesting. Let's see. Wagner also got some Panzer M. What's that? Wagner have shot down 6 helicopters and 1 plane today. Yeah, that's nuts, honestly. Those helicopters, they're not going to be usable because of the fact that the Wagner Group are packing heat. Apparently they've got javelins as well, which is nuts. If they've got javelins, they can take out those Russian tanks with ease. Those javelin rockets are absolutely disgusting, honestly. They will hit with ruthless intent. So we're going to switch to the last question of the day. Just a quick refresh, see if anyone's posted, and if you want to ask me any questions, what is this? If you've got any questions that you want to ask, I'll put a community post up. Do you know what? I'll do that at the end of this stream, actually. I'll put the community post up for the live chat 7. And then you can just ask whatever questions you have. And it will happen next week, because I'll forget otherwise. Yeah, Wagner's got a lot of tanks. So last question of the day is from Sabine, which asks, the Bank of England has just increased interest rates by 0.5%. It's now at 5%. I'm surprised I didn't see more panic in the office recently. What is a Panzer? 1 second. Let me Google this quickly. Panzer. SAMs. Alright. Mobile anti-air missiles. Interesting. I did see a few of them in a video today. I did see a few of them in a video. So yeah, that makes sense what those were. I thought those were artillery rockets, but they're not. Let's see. So before I get distracted again, the government has no plan B for inflation. I will actually cover this in the stream. I do have a thing. I heard that Karen Ward, the one who was once at the Bank of England, who now works at JP Morgan in London, let out the cat out of the bag. Yes, I saw that. Yeah, she said the best way to beat inflation in England has to be to force the UK into recession. More than that, though, she said the bank has to create fear. That fear should she insisted be palpable. Yes, that was nuts. That was absolutely nuts. That was absolutely nuts. I saw the video. I've got it here actually. Funnily enough. So we'll go through that in a few minutes. I just want to see just quickly if anything has really happened. The problem is most of the breaking news is on Twitter, but you have no idea who you can trust on Twitter. No worries, Roseanne. Prigozhin, I'm just seeing that now. Prigozhin accepted Lukashenko's proposal to stop the Wagner Group movement in Russia and take further steps to de-escalate tensions, the press service of Belarusian president reported. Ukraine appears to have a major success on the front lines. Mass surrenders of Russian troops being reported. That's not a surprise. Chain of command's fallen. Chain of command absolutely gone. It's finished. I think that there's no way. Oh, is that IShowSpeed guy? There's no way that they can have a war on this front. So yeah, honestly, I think it's over. Civilians live streaming the Wagner Group assault on the headquarters of the. Yeah, it's nuts, honestly. Especially with technology now, people are live streaming this stuff on video, just absolutely documenting history, and there's no real way to stop them. Honestly, it's Tim Cook getting absolutely rinsed as well. But yeah, honestly, it's pretty crazy. So let's go on to the topics. I don't want to get copyrighted because loads of video playing in the on Twitter. So we're going to start with Mark Carney, the guy the UK wishes we had right now. I'm a bit annoyed at this article, to be honest with you, because he doesn't talk about what his solutions would be for the UK. Maybe the interview didn't ask him, but I feel like if you talk about problems in the country, especially if you're a guy with my chair's creaking. If you're a guy with the expertise of Mark Carney, who has a decent record, I think you should be offering some solutions. I hope. But that's not the case. So Mark Carney blames stubbornly high inflation in Britain on Brexit, claiming he warned the public that leaving the European Union would damage the economy. Sorry if you can hear the blender going off in the background. So what Mark Carney is saying, that the cause of inflation is predominantly Brexit. Now we flip over to Andrew Bailey, an absolute fraud of the week, this brother, a fraud of the year really, saying Andrew Bailey has blamed unsustainable pay rises for stoking inflation as the Bank of England lifted interest rates again. And we know it's not inflation though. We know it's not wages, because wages have gone up by a few percentage points, I believe, versus inflation, which is significantly higher than the wage rises. Wages are catching up to inflation. They haven't exceeded it for a long while now, a good couple of years. And we also know the CPI inflation is bogus. That's something Fact Not Fiction talks about all the time. He's not here, but I'm sure if he was, he'd write a paragraph about it. The CPI inflation is bogus. It doesn't take into account rents or mortgages. It doesn't take into account energy. Those are two of the three biggest things impacting people. And then, when it comes to food, what foods are they looking at to calculate their inflation figure? What foods are in the basket of goods? Because from what I've heard, they're counting things like foreign holidays, because they can skew the figures, because we don't know what the hell they're talking about. That's something Bootstrap Cook, what's her name? She talks about how to cook on a budget. Let me see if I can find her quickly. Jack Monroe talks about. That's something Jack Monroe talks about a lot. Which is that, what are they calculating inflation, because the cost of pasta has gone up by, say 20%. The cost of olive oil, I think, has gone up by like 50% or something like that. So what are they using to calculate this stuff? It's very obvious the Bank of England is looking for the easy option, which is to blame workers and blame the public, honestly. And, let's also not forget that the UK is facing a massive staff shortage, and that's caused partially by Brexit. So yeah, it's just this guy's an absolute moron. I'll be honest with you. This guy, he sucks at his job. He absolutely sucks at his job. He's not doing a good job. He's constantly blaming workers for it. And then you have the Tories basically giving up. The Tories giving up. I was going to cover this at the time, but I just lost track of time. Which is the UK has no alternative to Bank of England to bank interest rates to rise to calm down inflation, when we know it's not wages causing the inflation predominantly. It's objectively true. Him saying the UK has no alternative but to hike interest rates in a bid to tackle rising prices, the Chancellor said. Jeremy Hunt said inflation, the rate at which the price rises, was the number one challenge we face. The problem is, it's supply side that's causing the problems. It's getting the food into the supermarkets, things like that. These are the things causing all the problems. It's gas prices, people being price gouged. It's that sort of stuff. That's what's causing the problem here. If you look at the three major things, right? You've got energy prices, which are the UK is paying the highest amount, I think, globally right now. Why are we paying the highest amount? It makes no sense. When we have been impacted less by Russia's invasion of Ukraine than a country like Germany, surely Germany should be paying more than us for their energy, for their gas and oil. Should that not be the case? Because they imported so much from Russia. Where are they buying it from now? Why are we paying so much more than them? Makes no sense. So you've got that one. So you've got energy, right? You've got food. The cost of food increase isn't being caused because of people buying all the food, a massive demand on food. It's being caused by supply chain shocks. It's caused by I think aviation flu in the UK is pushing the price of eggs and things like that up, but also the fact that we can't import food as easily because of all of the Brexit red tape, the import checks, the customs fees, the export paperwork that EU suppliers have to pay and have to get signed. On top of that, the fact that haulage drivers don't want to come to the UK anymore because they don't want to get stuck in the Dover-Calais crossing is all the stuff we've been talking about for a couple of years now that's really coming in to impact the UK massively. We saw slower amounts of inflation, it growing slowly, and then boom, it's all hitting at once because you've got smaller and smaller supply chain shocks within that are causing more and more problems. Let's see, Prigozhin looks like one of those orcs from Lord of the Rings. He really does. Wonder what the USD and gold versus stock market going to happen come Monday. This could be all over come Monday. What are you talking about? What are you talking about specifically there? QA. Maria Avdiva. When Wagner mercenaries reached Moscow region, Lukashenko said he had talks with Prigozhin and he agreed to turn Wagner PMCs back. Can Putin be humiliated even more? It's interesting that Lukashenko stepped in when he's not looked at having a ton of power. So I do wonder what he said to Prigozhin to get him to not stand down, but temporarily come back. Very, very interesting. I wonder what was said in that conversation. Genuinely, because if he could march on Moscow, he should have taken his chance. If the dude wants power, he's fumbled the situation. Oh look, oh my! Looks like Lukashenko is a turncoat. Who, to be fair, Putin did ask for the help of Kazakhstan. He asked for Kazakhstan to step in, but what they said was this is a Russian internal issue. At least that's what was reported. So we got to remember that Putin also stepped in to bail out the leader of Kazakhstan within the last year. I can't imagine Prigozhin stopping now either. This is his big chance. If you wanted to get rid of Putin and take power, this is it. Because this is his best chance to do it. There's never been a better opportunity to get rid of him than now. The Russian military is all over the place. The Russian military command is shot. Not as in no one's been killed, but as in it's shot to pieces. They don't know who's loyal to Shoigu and Putin and who's loyal to the Wagner group, because you have people who are just switching sides. It's a complete mess from top to bottom. It's a complete mess. But let's focus on this for now, and we'll go back to Russia in a bit unless something major happens. What we can see from this situation is that the UK government are more than happy just to let the economy go into recession. That's what it looks like. The economy grew by 0.0. While the economy grew by 0.2%, we're still below pre-pandemic levels as far as I'm aware. The ONS said that house builders and estate agents had a poor month. Well, that doesn't surprise me. Honestly, house building demand for new houses has fallen dramatically, and obviously people ain't buying as many houses because the interest rate rises. We've had sharp increases in borrowing, in interest rates fairly recently. An increase in interest rates means higher monthly mortgage payments, things like on debts, and the idea is it will cool off the economy because people can't go into so much debt. But yeah, it's meant to encourage consumers to spend less, and also they're meant to save more because the idea is that there's meant to be more. 29 people. There's meant to be more interest on people's savings account, but the banks aren't offering any real major increases to savings accounts, and I think it's the case that if they can increase your mortgage rate rapidly like this, they should have to increase your savings rate, honestly, because the banks are making money hand over fist, and I think the government should windfall tax them, honestly. Equally, banks and building sites have been reluctant to pass on rate hikes to savers this time, as the Bank of England and outraged customers have noted. So yeah, honestly, they should put a law in place there. Higher interest rates should also mean businesses have less scope to give workers inflation matching pay rises than in the past. But a shortage of workers makes that less likely this time. This is it. It's wages are catching up to inflation. It's not the other way around. It's not inflation catching up to wages. That's the important point there. The economy grew by 0.2%, which is very surprising, but we've still not reached pre-pandemic levels. You can see a massive drop off there, which we never really got back to. That's the big problem for the UK. Germany managed to get back to their pre-pandemic levels and a bit more, I think, whilst we didn't. So that's pretty much this. So what just opened here? Okay, that. So it very much looks like the government are, this is the government, and this is what the Bank of England are doing. They're going to force a recession. You got this from Lucy Allen, an MP. She is standing down, I believe. She's standing down, I believe, as an MP during the next election. She's talking about the interest. This is from George Eaton, we should say, about the interest rate rises. The problem with the argument that an interest rate rise of 10% in the 1970s is equivalent to one of just 2% today. House prices are 65 times higher than in 1970, and wages are only 35 times higher. So just because there were higher interest rates during the 70s, doesn't mean the smaller interest rates we're seeing now means much. And you have a lot of boomers here. A lot of boomers and stuff in the chat saying a lot of boomers in the chat saying, oh, back in my day it was way more difficult, but these people have no idea what they're talking about. So I was on 11% stop money. It's a winky face, that's I. But that's the point. And you got Lucy Allen MP saying, I don't think we quite understood the interest rate catastrophe. People telling me their monthly mortgage payment is exceeding their salary. That is unsustainable now. If only you were the MP for a party in power and could do something about it. Oh wait, you are. You could windfall tax the banks and give that money to renters and mortgage holders. There is something fundamentally you can do here, but you're choosing not to do anything, just like you guys didn't do much about the energy companies. An absolute joke, honestly. If only there was a hero who could save us. It's like, that's your job. You're the government. You're meant to do something. It's nuts, honestly. You know this from David Henning, saying, message from the Bank of England to the people, you need to get poorer quicker. He's saying, I'm struggling with how ill-conceived this message is, and it isn't the first offence either. You had the Bank of England a couple of months ago saying people in Britain need to accept they're poorer. This is what they're doing here. They're saying, you've got it too good. You got it too good. You had it too good for a while. Too much quantitative easing, too much cheap money, cheap debt. This is on you guys. Him saying, we cannot continue to have the current levels of wage increase. The problem with that is companies are having to, because the labour shortage, is having to pay workers more because they're having to compete with each other a lot more than they had to when we had things like freedom of movement and more immigration. So you're competing with workers more, which is partially funding inflation, yes. But all of these companies are struggling with exports for the most part if they're exporting to the EU and they had a history of doing it. Struggling with imports because of all the red tape. So you guys have caused this mess. Let's be honest now. This is caused by idiot Brexiteers who had no idea what they were talking about. So for them to blame it on wages constantly is a joke. Let's cut to some audio now. Might as well at that point in the day. This week, Jacob Rees-Mogg's pushing the Bank of England OBR needs to be under government control or abolished. Most countries have an independent central bank though. That's the problem. Obviously, EU countries have the European Central Bank. We have the Bank of England. The Americans have the Fed. A lot of countries have independent central banks. The Mirror reports that one of Lukashenko's planes has flown to Turkey. They're going to use Turkey as the mediation grounds then. That probably is one of the reasons why the deputy prime minister is gone. That Lee Anderson thing was bizarre. Board time from Russia is empty from the Russian side. There's no one left. One guy. Okay, so anyways, before I get even more distracted, let's listen to this clip from Sunak, who does not give anyone any confidence.
I think yesterday you would have heard some news about inflation. Today you may have seen what the Bank of England has announced with interest rates, and I'm sure that actually fills many of you with some anxiety, right?
As it should. Their mortgage rates are going up again potentially, and if they're renting, that rent is going to go up because the landlord's going to be like, sorry dog, going to increase your rent again, even if they're not even paying a mortgage. They don't care. It's about market prices.
And some concern about what's going on and what does that mean for you and your families. Now, I'm here to tell you that I am totally 100% on it, and it is going to...
Are you 100% on it though? Because you're not doing a great job so far, pal. I don't know what you've been doing for the last year, but it's not been good.
Be okay, and we are going to get through this. And that is the most important thing I wanted to let you know today. Now,
don't worry. You've got a terminal illness, but the doctors here were on it, and we're going to take care of you. How are you going to do that? Don't worry about it. You know, honestly, it doesn't fill me with confidence.
You should know, like, I know this won't make it any easier, but what we're grappling with here is something that many countries around the world are also grappling with at the same time.
I think we have higher interest rates in the Americans and the European Central Bank, so clearly we're an outlier. You want to explain that, big man? Honestly. See, Turkey Central Bank is no longer independent. That hasn't helped tackle inflation. Is because what's his face is doing weird stuff to deal with it. That's the difference, I think. He's not increasing interest rates, which is the typical dogma to deal with inflation, which I don't think we'll deal with it anyways. That's the problem. But yeah, you know, we've got this. Don't panic, guys. Everything will be okay. And then you had this clip that Sabine was talking about, which is absolutely terrifying.
Our economy is running too hot. Our labour market is still incredibly tight. That is therefore resulting in pay increases, which of course every household out there wants to be compensated for the fact that their cost of living is going up.
It's a good start. It's a fine start that she's had here.
Completely understandable. But what happens then is, as a producer, as a firm, you've had your energy bill goes up, then your wage bill goes up, and then you raise your prices again. And that's when you get into this sort of domestic inflation spiral.
Surely you want to be dealing with the energy prices then, not wages. Wages will cease to go up at some point then, but surely you should deal with the energy crisis because it's impacting businesses and households. One of the reasons why households need a wage increase is because of the energy crisis. Her reasoning makes no sense.
That the Bank of England has to nip in the bud.
So we are then in a price-wage spiral as far as you're concerned?
I think there's certainly signs that it's emerging. And the difficulty for the Bank of England, I mean, no one envies them their job at the moment, is they have to therefore create a recession. They have
to create a recession. This is something the audience have been talking about for a while, that the Bank of England is trying to create a recession. I said, nah, that's nuts. I was like, that's nuts. They're not going to do that. And then
England, I mean, no one envies them their job at the moment, is they have to therefore create a recession.
This is a person who's apparently advising Jeremy Hunt, one of the Chancellor's economic advisors, is saying they need to spark a recession. This is why Jeremy Hunt's going down this line, because this person here has told him, you know, the person who works for, I think it's JP Morgan, has said they need to spark a recession. When the government have other options, you know, they need to start doing windfall taxes. They need to start redistribution of money. They should have dealt with the energy crisis. They should have done a lot better dealing with the energy crisis and the other problems we're facing right now, but they're not. And that's what's causing this mess. You know, the fact is she had a strong start there talking about the energy crisis and wages wanting to be compensated. It's not inflation that's the main driver here. It's the import checks, it's the export checks, it's the energy crisis that are the main drivers, in my opinion, of inflation.
They have to create uncertainty and frailty because it's only when companies feel nervous about the future that they will think, well, maybe I won't put through that price rise. Or workers, when they're a little bit less confident about their job, think, well,
or maybe I won't put up that price rise. You know, they're doing it. A lot of these businesses will be struggling. 1 second. Just had to sneeze. A lot of these businesses will be struggling, and if they don't put up their prices, potentially some of them might go under. Some of them are making record profits, like the supermarkets. They're not considering should we put prices up or not. They don't care. They'll do it anyways because they know they can, because they know people will pay for it because they haven't got a choice. If the businesses that sell essential goods will be the ones that are thinking we can sell our stuff for more because people ain't got a choice. That's the difference. And at this point about workers, it's just bizarre.
rise, or workers, when they're a little bit less confident about their job, think, oh, I won't push my boss for that higher pay. It's that weakness in activity which eventually gets rid of inflation.
That's cap. Honestly, that's nonsense. Because the problem isn't predominantly wages or demand side. Or it's not driven by demand side economics. It's supply side. That's the predominant problem. It's the energy crisis. It's the food crisis. All of these things are the main drivers of inflation. What she's talking about is absolute nonsense. And what the Bank of England are doing is absolute nonsense. It's time for the UK to think like an emerging market, not... Oh, Jesus Christ. That's gnarly. That's absolutely gnarly.
Now, of course, none of that's pleasant. And as I say, I really don't envy the job of the Bank of England in being the one who has to cause that weakness. But that is there's no other way around it.
This is what I'm talking about. When this is when what's his face, David Henning's absolutely right here. Message from the Bank of England to the people: you need to get poorer quicker. You need to be worried about your job. You best not ask for a goddamn pay rise because you are the problem. When we know they're not the problem, and we know these people that are in charge understand this, because where is it gone? They want to be compensated for the fact that their cost of living is going up. That's what's driving inflation. It's the cost of living. Brexit has played a large part in a lot of the cost of living stuff. Brexit has also placed a large part on the tightness in the labour market in the UK. But I believe that other countries, even in the EU, have very low unemployment rate. I think the Netherlands is one of them. They're at around 4%. Where's the... Can't find the accurate number for it, the most up-to-date one. It looks like it's at 3.5%. The UK's unemployment rate is at 3.8. So it looks like the Netherlands. Is slightly lower, but they're not facing the same problems that we're facing. So it's not just down to the employment rate. That is a factor, yes, but predominantly, it's caused by the cost of living crisis. It's caused by energy. It's caused by food. It's caused now predominantly by mortgages. So people will continue to ask for pay rises because they know the labour market is tight. They know that certain employers are struggling, and they can say, I want more money or I'm going to leave. And other places will offer them more money. But they're predominantly doing this. Because of the cost of living crisis. So for this lady to come out and say, oh, it's wages that are the problem, she acknowledged at the start that energy is a problem here. She acknowledged that. So surely the question should be, how do we deal with the cost of living crisis? Not how do we deal with the wage increases, because the wage increases is a direct response to the cost of living crisis. What she's talking about is absolute nonsense. From 91 Leeds, my landlord has decided to sell the flat I'm in. There isn't a lot in my area that I can afford in today's market. A rough situation. Honestly, there's a lot more of that happening where landlords will unfortunately decide to sell, and you can't buy the flat because of the interest rate rises and other affordability problems. Conservator, I'm very aware of the problems happening in Turkey. Tomorrow night I'll be in Istanbul. I stay 1 month. I had to know what is happening in Turkey. It's not great in Turkey, but it seems fairly stable-ish. It's I think it's a good time if you're a tourist because your money's going to be worth a lot over there. UK is losing foreign investments, and why the Bank of England is trying to law more money with offering higher interest rates. Tories have destroyed their logistics. It's nuts. This I'm going to cover fairly soon. Let's see. I'll probably record it tomorrow and figure out when I should upload it at some point soon. I want to move on to David Cameron getting absolutely rinsed over his implementation because of what austerity did.
Making these difficult choices about spending was it wasn't a sort of option that was picked out of thin air. I believed, and I still believe, it was absolutely essential to get the British economy and British public finances back to health. So you can.
He's talking nonsense because we didn't have to do austerity. And the austerity that they did was more aggressive than the other countries that were in a much worse financial position than us. I did speak about to someone in the chat about the fact that public sector pay was actually worse in the UK than it was in Ireland. The Ireland who had the Troika and other groups involved during their financial crash and the amount of borrowing that they did. So what David Cameron is talking about is nonsense, especially to the degree that they cut it to.
The future crisis.
Yeah, it was done to shrink the state. That's why they did austerity.
The inquiry has received witness statements from Jeremy Hunt, who was the Secretary of State for Health and then Health and Social Care from 2012 to 2018. Were you aware that during the time that you were in power, Mr. Hunt laboured considerable concerns about the structural problems within NHS capacity and the workforce and funding, as he has set out in his witness statement?
I've read his witness statement. He was a very capable health secretary.
He wasn't, because there was a crisis every year under him. It's just nonsense.
I worked with him extremely closely. Of course, he was always batting for the NHS and for all the extra resources he could get. These decisions were arrived at collectively.
So you're all responsible for the failure with the health service. Nice.
I agree with
He's told not to cut so much because in the long term it would weaken the economy. Yes, shocker there.
a lot of what's in his witness statement, where he says there's more that could be done, for instance, for future workforce planning.
So why don't you do it, big man?
But I will absolutely defend the record of the government in both getting control of the finances and increasing...
He's talking absolute rubbish because, it's been well established that it was austerity and the damage they did to the NHS. The biggest threat to face Britain would have been a pandemic. And, what were we hit with? A goddamn pandemic. We had one of the lowest ICU beds per capita in all of Europe, I think. There's only a few countries below us. And in terms of nursing and things like that, doctors, we have very low per capita rates compared to other countries. So David Cameron's talking absolute rubbish, but I enjoy the fact that he's being raked, at least over the decisions that he made as Prime Minister. You'd love to see it. This is from this is another BBC one. Professor Dame Sally tells the inquiry it wasn't just the death, it was the way they died, and this is harrowing.
Maybe this is the moment to say how sorry I am to the relatives who lost their families. It wasn't just the deaths, it was the way they died. It was horrible. And I heard a lot about it from my daughter on the front line as a young doctor in Scotland. It was harrowing.
It's brutal. Honestly, it's absolutely brutal the way some of these people died. Just alone, without their family members. Some people barely had any medical care in the worst moments of their lives, before death, especially dying of an illness. The UK was at the bottom. Let's see. The UK, compared with similar countries, the UK was at the bottom of the table for a number of doctors, nurses, and intensive care units and ventilators per 100,000, she said. Comparable countries, that'd be other G7 members, I'm assuming. World beating we are, aren't we? During the questions about preparation exercises for pandemics, Dame Sally broke off to say, maybe this is the moment to say how sorry I am. That's the bit we mentioned earlier. At the same hearing, George Osborne said his spending cuts meant the UK was better able to cope with the pandemic. That is the biggest lie I think I've heard all day, that austerity helped us deal with the pandemic. He argued that without austerity, Britain would have been more exposed, and rejected claims his approach left the health and social service care depleted. He absolutely did. We didn't have the staff to deal with anything. If it was the case that after 2015, they started investing massively into the NHS, we might not have been in the mess that we were in. But they did it to roll back the state because they don't believe in things like the NHS. They believe in privatisation. That's the problem. Asked by the inquiry lawyer Kate Blackwell QC if he agreed with the statement, Mr. Osborne said, most certainly I do not, I completely reject it. And that's the accusation that he depleted the public services, which we absolutely know to be true. Saying that Britain would have been more exposed, it's the biggest lot of lies I've ever seen. Genuinely, it's just pure lies. This is an article I'm going to cover soon. We're going to move on to the Russia stuff now, which is, the Wagner Group tanks have surrounded the Defence Ministry building in Rostov-on-Don. So that was from 3 a.m. this morning, the footage. So, Russia being really far ahead of us in terms of time zone. But you have a lot of civilians here, which is interesting. I'm going to try and not zoom around, but you have a lot of civilians here, tanks aimed at the government building, but the civilians being left alone. Which is a good sign, and this is how it kind of just kicked off. Honestly, Russia accuses Wagner mercenary group leader of plotting armed uprising. So what had happened was, let's see, the alleged coup began on Friday evening when Prigozhin's press team posted a video memos which said a huge number of fighters had been killed in an airstrike, and that Wagner would respond to this evil doing in his most vitriolic tirade against the country's leadership to date. So what happened is that Prigozhin alleged that his units, the Wagner group, were attacked by Russian airstrikes. Their own side effectively attacked them, and he's got a long-standing beef with Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu, and that beef is over things like resources, amongst other things. He's very angry. He claims that the lack of resources, and the Wagner Group did a lot of the heavy lifting in Soledar, apparently, and Shoigu took a lot of the credit for it. And so the Wagner Group, they're not friends, let's put it that way. The leader of Russia's biggest private military corporation and the Russian military, and the guy in charge of Russia's military, they are not friends, and that's what keeps running them into problems during this whole invasion fiasco. He kept threatening to pull out and things like that. He goes, right now we have crossed all the border points with Ukraine. The border guards greeted us and hugged our fighters. Now we are entering Rostov. If anyone gets in our way, we will destroy everything. And it looks like he's pulled back, based on what I'm reading now. Wagner chief is pulled back to avoid any further bloodshed. So I think they're going to start occupying areas in Russia. But in my opinion, if he wanted to take power, he would have gone for it, and he didn't. And the Wagner Group, this is where Prigozhin gave Putin a way out. He gave Putin a way out, and he didn't take it. So what happened was Prigozhin was ranting and raving against the Russian leadership, specifically Sergei Shoigu, and I think Prigozhin maybe wants the spot of defense minister because it would bolster his power a lot. And I think that's why he wants that spot. But the problem is, Putin sided with Shoigu over this. And, in his latest video, Prigozhin blamed Shoigu for starting Russia's war in Ukraine in February last year, speaking first about the fighting in eastern Ukraine that began in 2014 after Russia's military intervention. Prigozhin said, quote, "We were hitting them and they were hitting us. That's how it went for those long 8 years from 2014 to 2022. Sometimes the number of skirmishes would increase, sometimes it would decrease. On February, there was nothing extraordinary happening there. Now the Ministry of Defense is trying to deceive the public, deceive the president, and tell a story that was some crazy aggression by Ukraine that, together with the whole NATO bloc, Ukraine was planning to attack us. The war was needed so that Shoigu could become a marshal, so that he would get a second hero star. The war wasn't for demilitarizing or denazifying Ukraine, it was needed for an extra star." Prigozhin also blamed the war on oligarchs, condemning the clan in which practice rules Russia today. Strong words. So what you have is Prigozhin giving Vladimir Putin an out by saying, look, this war is all on Sergei Shoigu. There were border skirmishes and things like that between Russian forces and Ukrainian forces in and around probably Crimea. But it wasn't that bad. And then suddenly he's talking about this. You can see the framing here. It's very interesting what he's saying here. He's talking about how the conflict was raging on for so many years now, 8 years, and then suddenly, Shoigu comes out with this crazy story. This is what Prigozhin is alleging. Shoigu comes out with a crazy story that Ukraine is full of Nazis and that together with the NATO bloc, Ukraine was going to attack Russia. And the reason Shoigu did this is in order to get a promotion and so he could get a second star for demilitarizing or for denazifying Ukraine. That was the plan. And what Prigozhin did was intelligent. He gave Putin an out. Putin does play divide and conquer with his military organizations, yes, and that's one of the things that's got him into this mess as well. And so this is what he gave Putin, but Putin fumbled because Putin said the Wagner Group rebellion is a criminal adventuristic campaign, the equivalent to armed mutiny, and to an extent he is right because they ran up, the Wagner Group ran up on government buildings in kind of revenge for what the Russian military apparently did to the Wagner Group in terms of airstriking their own guys, which could have been an accident. We've heard stories about Russian planes bombing targets within Russia, which is nuts. But what Putin is saying is about the Wagner Group. He said, quote, "It's an attempt to subvert us from inside. This is treason," end quote. And he's going for the stab in the back myth. We've heard that one before on the channel. And what he's doing is saying, this is. He's probably going to blame the West, to be honest with you, but he's saying the war effort is being scuppered by our own team, even though this is the group that have done most of the heavy lifting in Ukraine, and these are the ones that are took a lot of damage. But we'll move on to our next point, which is a military column of Chechen soldiers have just arrived to the Rostov region. Looks like the battle between the Wagner Group and Kadyrov Chechens is about to start. This from a couple of hours ago, and I haven't heard any updates to this. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Plus the fact that, Kadyrov's group have been called the TikTok Brigade, so I'm not sure if they're doing anything. And in Rostov, people are apparently approaching the mercenaries, offering them food and handshakes and stuff like that, which shows you that Putin, I don't think Putin was ever that popular. It's just that people tolerate him. I think that's what it was, because, you rebel against Putin, you get put in jail now. But the difference is, that's probably not going to happen if you're in one of these cities and you say, Putin sucks, so we need to get rid of him. I don't think there's anything bad that's really going to happen to you here, because that's what these guys want by the looks of things. You got Russian air forces targeting Wagner equipment on the highway. That was this morning. So you got them, doing airstrikes in their own country, which is nuts, absolutely nuts. Crowds of Russians gathering at the central station of Rostov, trying to flee the town before clashes start with the Wagner Group and Kadyrov Chechens. But again, we've not heard of any actual fighting, I think, between the two groups. There was a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. Let's see, where is it? It was somewhere here. I scrolled down by mistake, like a fool. The problem is I'm not sure how reliable all of these sources are, because as always, war is the first truth is the first casualty of war. But Russia allegedly destroyed a fuel depot in the city to keep Wagner from using it during their march north. It looks like Russia are doing kind of what Ukraine did, which is to slow down the Wagner Group, which is destroying their own infrastructure. But we do know, based on what I'm reading here, sorry to switch from dark to light mode again, which is, confirmed that someone mentioned the chat earlier, which is Wagner chief says mercenaries turning back to avoid bloodshed. So effectively they have, for whatever reason, it's very surprising, they've stepped back. Kadyrov is the most powerful army leader on TikTok. Yes, he is. Yeah, no worries, Ali. It sounds like you're heading off. Let's see. Russia government forces can have problems. Can I recommend you a short? By the way, hi. Yeah, sure. If you post it in chat. Let's see. Boris talking about submersible submarines in the day. I'm not gonna bother to read anything he puts out. I'll be honest. I ain't gonna read that, bro. But what we can see here is Russia destroying bridges and all sorts of stuff. This kind of made me laugh. This we can apply to this situation. Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So it's just a clip to bring some humour to this. Oh. Sorry, I just Bully Maguire clips always make me laugh. I'll just turn the audio down to replay that. There you got Putin arming the bombs. Boom. Honestly, so it's pretty nuts the way this whole thing has gone. But this is the best visualization you'll get of it. Call an ambulance, but not for me. I did want to talk about the submarine a bit as well. Yeah, don't bother reading Johnson's articles in the Daily Mail. Apparently, according to Alistair Campbell, that's causing the problems. Anyways, apparently the words escape me. Struggling. Apparently, according to Campbell, there's a lot of uproar in the Daily Mail about them hiring back Boris Johnson, the amount they're spending on him, and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so this about the submarine thing. This about I did want to touch on this because it's become like a really small story now, really, given the context of what's going on in Russia. But word to the audience. I doubt you'll ever be in this situation, but don't mess around with the ocean. Water is dangerous. We have lots of talks about how fire is dangerous. Water is dangerous. You've got the guy who is the CEO of this company saying, who cares about safety and all of this stuff. He's tired of industry players who try and use safety as an argument to stop innovation. He didn't innovate much. It's a submarine. I don't think there's much innovation. I don't think there's much innovation going on when he built the submarine, I'll be honest. Submarines have been around for a long time now. So there's that. But everyone who, the fact that there were a load of billionaires who went on this submarine and didn't ask for basic checks to be done, or a regulator or someone with authority to look over this, is pretty tragic, to be honest. But, this is the only person I think on the submarine I do feel really sorry for, which is this 19-year-old kid who he didn't want to go, but, he wanted to please his dad, and that's something I think a lot of people can kind of relate to, kind of the pressure, kind of parents can put on you without really knowing it. And this is the kid I feel sorry for. I genuinely, I feel bad for him. The way the media's handling of this has been absolutely atrocious, because by the sounds of it, the pressure on the submarine just got too great, and they would have died very quickly. But there's all these talks of, they would have run out of oxygen by now and all this stuff, and it's the worst side of the media, to be honest. Salacious. It's preying on kind of the deaths and suffering of other people. But yeah, it's just, the fact is, like, if you're gonna go on a dangerous expedition, or some sort of dangerous trip, you want regulators to look over the vehicle you're going in. Otherwise, you might end up in big trouble. They all moaned about the way it was put together. The experts were, even, I think his name is James Cameron, the director of Titanic. He's made the trip to Titanic multiple times. He said, as soon as he heard about it, he said, "This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea," and it was. I mean, look at the way this thing is built. It doesn't look very safe, does it? Especially compared to submarines that can go down, hundreds of meters. This looks like someone made it in a shed. Like, genuinely, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't look very promising, does it? And the fact is, because of this dude's actions, and because it wasn't checked over properly, people have died. Funny how balanced coverage was compared to our. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Didn't it implode a day or two before? Yeah, I think it was pretty instant, to be honest with you. Jeez, there's the boy himself. I think it was pretty instant, to be honest. I think once they hit a certain pressure point, I think it just broke into pieces. James Cameron and Robert Belland, Ballard, sorry, not Belland, apologies, who discovered the wreck. Yeah, I read it for research, but honestly, it's just. I feel for this kid. I really do. Because it sounds like he got dragged into a situation he did not want to be in. And we'll end with a positive story, which is one I was going to cover, but I don't know whether it's worth covering now, I'll be honest. But this one's fun. This one is one of the fun stories, which is Liz Truss says that the lettuce jokes were puerile and the media did not understand her ideas. So once again, Liz Truss has piped up because of the fact that the borrowing on the bond has gone up significantly. It's gone back up to the levels when she was in charge, even though the interest rates were much lower when she was in charge, which is something she fails to understand. She was interviewed at the News Exchange event by RTE, which I think is Irish. Journalist David, probably is Irish. Truss was reminded of the Daily Star's decision to live stream the decline of the lettuce in a blonde wig after an Economist article a fortnight before said before she was ousted, likening the PM's political longevity to that of a lettuce. Asked if she thought he could see the funny side of the Star's decision, Truss replied, quote, "I don't think it's funny, I just think it's puerile." Truss also disputed the idea the Economist's original parallel was a fair one to make, saying, quote, "I mean, what's the relevance of that? This is what I'm talking about. To me, it's not a very relevant question," end quote. And I think they picked the lettuce because lettuce doesn't last long, it's just funny. It's just funny. It's just, can you outlast a vegetable, honestly? They could have picked broccoli. They could have picked Brussels sprouts, for example. They could have picked anything, but, you couldn't outlast a lettuce. More widely, Truss argued the UK media were focused overly on trivialities and did not properly understand economics. If they wanted to focus on the trivial stuff, they would have focused on that wink you constantly do when you're stressed. Because I saw it during the debates. She was constantly winking and blinking and stuff like that. She was stressed. She's saying, if I've got criticism of the media, there's too much focus on the people and seeing it as some sort of entertaining story to follow, rather than discussions of the ideas, and I particularly find that true on economics, she said. Did I and my colleagues get everything perfect about communication? No, you didn't get anything perfect. You didn't get anything close to that. She said, but I think we're operating in an environment where the economic ideas that I believe in are not widely understood. No one can understand your ideas because they don't make sense. How do you do tax cuts based on borrowing? That doesn't grow the economy. We know tax cuts don't grow the economy. She's talking absolute drivel. Truss praised the media for their irreverent and robust approach, saying, quote, I think the British media are known around the world for being particularly vociferous, ellipses. I don't think they're particularly deferential to politicians. Certainly when I went to international summits, I would get a lot of sympathy from politicians from other countries who were saying, my God, your press, what are those people like? End quote. And honestly, the only people who would say that were probably dictators, like the Saudis or the Qataris or something. I can't imagine like the Germans saying, "Oh my God, the English press are so bad towards you," and she didn't even get the brunt of it. She got treated like a clown. She got clowned on. She didn't get called the enemy of the people or any of that other stuff, the nasty stuff that the press do. They didn't investigate her personal life, which they could have done, and then it would have got really nasty. But they didn't do that. They made her look like a clown because she decided to act like one. That's all that happened there. It's just comical, honestly. But I reckon I'm gonna read a couple more comments, and we're gonna call the stream because we've been about just over an hour in, and I'm pretty tired. Sorry if posted before I had finished. They both said a big explosion was heard on listening devices, and they knew the sub had imploded. They couldn't understand. Yeah, I think they knew instantly that the sub had imploded, honestly, or it bust up, like those people were dead. Honestly, I think they knew straight away. There's now a moron premium built into gilt yields. Yes, there is, and we're all paying for it, or people in Britain are paying for it. Facts. Breaking: Russian Defense Ministry announced it has killed 150. That's cap. Honestly, that's cap. There's no way bro even has 700 tanks. From satire. Is that meant to be satire by Sputnik in the form of Moscow media? Yeah, that's cap, honestly. Did the lettuce wear those dodgy Lionels to the... I don't know. I don't really comment on women's clothing. The only time I did it was when Liz Truss was wearing those weird kind of outfits to kind of peacock. Prigozhin sent troops back, uprising's over. Yeah, it's weird he's done that, to be honest with you. I don't know what he was promised, because he could have taken Moscow. I don't think they stood a chance, to be honest with you, but it seems like maybe he doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to take power by violence. Maybe that will impact his kind of... Maybe he doesn't want it to. Maybe he doesn't want to start a civil war. He wants power to transition peacefully. I just don't think that will happen. But yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap the stream here. I'm just gonna check if there's anything new that's come up. Uprising over, yeah. I don't think it's over for the Wagner Group, but considering that Putin has called it mutiny and all this kind of other stuff. Oops. Nope. Oh shoot! I hope I don't copyright claim for that. I don't imagine much is going to happen here. I can't see much. Mercenaries are, they're turning back to avoid bloodshed. It very much looked like they just took areas. They just occupied areas, and they didn't do much more than that. Oh yeah, 100% it's been weakened. The avoidance of bloodshed isn't because of what Putin did. It's because of what Prigozhin did. That's the difference. Prigozhin hasn't. If he wanted to start, breaking heads effectively right now, he could have done so. He could have gone into Moscow, especially if they got jets from the airfield. If they got some of the decent jets in, they could have started causing absolute havoc. Honestly, considering they've got everything they need to cause chaos, but he chose not to for whatever reason. Wagner soldiers will stop marching towards Moscow. The full statement from Prigozhin saying, quote, "They wanted to disband the Wagner military company. We embarked on a march of justice on the 23rd of June. In 24 hours, we got to within 200 kilometers of Moscow. In this time, we did not spill a single drop of our fighters' blood. Now the moment has come when blood could be spilled. Understanding responsibility for the chance that Russian blood will be spilled on one side, we are turning our columns around and going back to the field camps as planned." Prigozhin's statement has been viewed on his Telegram channel more than 3 million times, because he's saying, if I wanted to end Putin's whole career, I could have done so. So I wonder what the discussion's about. As kind of Sabine said, one of the top Russian guys is in Turkey, so I reckon talks are going to happen in Turkey by the sounds of it, which seems to be kind of a middle ground for a lot of these countries. But given that Lukashenko got involved, I genuinely don't know what kind of power Lukashenko has. I'll be honest, but somehow by some miracle he's managed to stop a civil war. Well, at least Prigozhin has stopped a possible civil war, because there was no real fighting. I think there's one drunk guy who started a fight with a Wagner guy, but that's about it. There was no fundamental fighting so far from what I've heard. We'll have to keep an eye on it, because obviously information control is something that they're going to be very careful of. But at the same time, given that people have just uploaded videos and junk, it's going to be very difficult for them to kind of control the internet. But we'll have to keep an eye on it. I think that's why one of the reasons Telegram might be so big in Russia. But I'm not sure. But I think I'm going to wrap the stream here. It's been a bit of a longish day for me, because I had to do stuff in the town centre, and it's hot as hell. If anyone didn't notice, it's very warm in old England. But it looks like I think this is the beginning of the end for Putin. Yeah, it's been a good stream. I've got loads of tabs to close as well. But I think it was Shoigu who started this. Prigozhin gave Putin a way out. Putin didn't take it. Instead, he decided to fight the Wagner Group. PMCs. I didn't start an hour early today. I started at normal time, 6 p.m. PMCs are illegal in Russia. So, Putin called it a coup attempt, called it treason, decided to, fight back against the Wagner Group. And then I think Prigozhin was like, yeah, I'm done, bro. I'm done. We'll square up to you as well. That's what it looks like. That's kind of what my interpretation of the timeline events is. It looks like there was a lot of disputes between Shoigu, the defense minister, and the Wagner Group leader, Prigozhin. If there was an airstrike on Wagner Group soldiers, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. He took it the wrong way. He said this war is the whole fault. This war is the whole fault. Can't even speak now, of Prigozhin. And so he tried to blame him. Putin was like, nah, bro, we're going to square up to you. And Prigozhin was like, cool, see you in Moscow. Honestly, that's what it runs off. It's one clip, actually. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Is it this? Let me just put my headphones on, and this will be the last thing we play today. But it just reminds me of this, honestly. This is what Prigozhin said in the end.
It's rolling out. So, when we going to Moscow?
Not soon enough, man. But I know we're gonna burn it down when we get there.
And yeah, he didn't do that last bit, but yeah. The question was, that's what he did. He ran up. He's like, the soldiers like, when are we going to Moscow? And yeah, he was going to run up on him. I genuinely think Putin is lucky to escape with his life today. He's very lucky, and they're very lucky not to have plunged Russia into a civil war today. Honestly, they are very close, very, very close to doing it. And for whatever reason, Prigozhin didn't do it, and I don't know why. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think. Thanks for everyone who joined. We hit around 30 viewers, which is always nice. We peaked at 30 viewers, I think, which is golden. It's always good stuff. I can't remember what the stream record is. I can't remember if it was 30, if it was 40. I can't remember, but it's nice to have you all here. I wouldn't know one game from another. Yeah, that's the thing with the Call of Duty series. But that's MW2. I remember that one because that one's a really good one. But yeah, anyways, if you do watch the stream back, let me know what you think of it. It was a bit messy in places. That's all right, Mithril. It was a bit messy in places just because of the situation in Russia, which has me switching back and forth because I just don't know. We had no idea what the hell was going to happen. But yeah, enjoy what's left of your weekend, and yeah, I'll catch you next week. Bye bye.